are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Gino, I want to dive first into that training camp topic because, again, this team looks so good when it comes to their starting 22 on both sides of the football. But you mentioned it the other day, like their sixth man and their 15th guy, to make a basketball reference, off the bench. It looks pretty good compared to other NFL rosters. Like, we even talked, the topic of the show a few days ago was, what role player are we going to say, like maybe week 7 of the season, needs to be on the field more? That's going to command more snaps or touches based on their efficiency. So it might be some of the same players, but for you, like, we'll start with offense. Who's one player that you're going to be maybe more invested in than most for one reason or another, following them through camp, practices, and the preseason?
I would say the one addition at wide receiver that kind of goes under the radar here, with A.J. Brown being the big name, that Zach Pascal move, where he's going to be your 4th wide receiver on this team, coming into an offense where he's very familiar with what Nick Sirianni is going to ask him to do. And what is he going to do? He's going to be asked to be a possession-style receiver, get in and out of his breaks rather quickly, be on good timing with Jalen Hurts, and just be a reliable weapon. Because if you go down the depth chart, they're going to have a bunch of undrafted rookies that could potentially fill into that spot. John Hightower could potentially be the 5th guy, maybe Greg Ward. You can go on, but Zach Pascal is the surefire number 4. Yeah. He's not going anywhere. There was a reason they brought him in, and there was a reason when I did my correlation between Spotify soundtracks with players, I said I only want to be with you for Zach Pascal by Hootie and the Blowfish, because who else would he rather be with than Nick Sirianni? True. And I think that when you look back at those young Eagles offenses in the past 10 years or so, that one stable guy that they had, Lou, Jason Avant, I think Zach Pascal could play a very similar role to Jason Avant.
Kind of what Greg Ward has been supposed to be the last few years, but at a way higher level.
Absolutely. I would say at a way higher level. I think he's going to give you more consistency in his route running, a better understanding of the game plan and what he's going to be asked to do.
He's just a better overall talent, too.
I agree. Yeah. I think Zach Pascal's best days came under Nick Sirianni, and I think there is something to be said about how well you play for a certain coach. Zach Pascal is that guy. I think he's going to be somebody that will be instrumental in helping the young guys continue to learn, help Devontae Smith, even help A.J. Brown find their way in that Nick Sirianni offense, where it's going to be A.J. Brown's first year. It'll be Zach Pascal's first year in Philly, but it'll be a couple years removed from the last time he played with Nick, and a lot of those similar concepts will be in play here in Philadelphia.
Every coach does this. They have one guy that was almost like a player coach for them to help them along the way to start a new regime. Chip Kelly, it was Dennis Dixon, actually, in 2013, your boy from Oregon. And also Doug Peterson did it with Chase Daniel. Zach Pascal, though, of all the three, is going to have a much bigger role. And I don't think Jalen Reagor's touching him at wide receiver 4. And, Quez Watkins is going to be the wide receiver 3, but Pascal will dip into his touches for sure. He's going to play this year. So that's definitely a good one. For me, it's actually your guy, one of my guys in the 2022 NFL draft, and it's quarterback Carson Strong. And not because I think he would ever take Jalen Hurts' job or be the franchise quarterback, but I'm just really fascinated by his arm talent.
We can never say never in Philadelphia.
I guess you can never say never. That's very true. But I'm not saying he's going to even be the Nick Foles of backup quarterbacks, but I think he's a much more intriguing Nate Sudfeld, if you will. Third quarterback this year to develop, and he's got more raw upside than Sudfeld did. I saw his arm live down in Mobile, Alabama for the Senior Bowl, and it's as advertised. I mean, again, the kid's got the mobility of a dump truck with the way that his legs are held together right now. But if he can stay healthy and he can progress, he could become, I think, one of the best QB2s in the NFL, Gino. And if a guy went down, like they always have in Eagles history, that's not a bad player to have with that kind of arm talent. So these weapons aren't being held back by their backup quarterback. So I'm really interested to see how he looks, how healthy he looks, how that arm looks in training camp in year 1. And I think he's going to garner keeping a spot on this 53-man roster. He's probably not going to dress all the time, but I think the Eagles are going to get back to maybe keeping 3 quarterbacks.
for how much they paid him in undrafted money, I don't see any way that he isn't on the 50.
Plus Minshew's future after this year, he's going to be somewhere else competing for a job, I'm sure.
And if not through a trade, by the trade deadline, there could be a team that comes calling that say, I mean, let's look at a roster like, let's say the Giants overperform, right? And Daniel Jones takes a knock week 6, right? Not saying you would trade within your division, but there's other teams like that.
A Vikings Bridgewater thing.
There you
Bradford.
go. Yes,
you're not going to get a first round pick for him, but
you
I
might
totally
get a third round pick in the middle of the season for him. Saints with the same thing with Bridgewater as well, where they traded a third for him as well. I could see something like that happening. But Carson Strong has the arm of Josh Allen, but the legs of a Galapagos turtle.
Yeah, man, that's bad.
He can't move.
If he was mobile, his arm talent's day one.
Absolutely. All day. And there's something to be said about how badly they've missed on quarterbacks in the past couple years in terms of who they drafted, i.e. Clayton Thorson.
Thorson
was an absolute disaster. They made up for that by bringing in Minshew, who they should have taken with that Clayton Thorson pick. Now they have a very good number 2, if not, I would say a top 3 number 2 quarterback in the league right now in Gardner Minshew. So now Carson Strong can really do what a type of player of his caliber needs to do. It's sit and progress with those young guys.
Yeah.
Get a hold of the offense. Don't get forced into the action where you're seeing top-level minutes that these top 3 or 4 picks are going to get. No, he's going to be seeing reps against second and third stringers in the preseason. But that's what a player like that needs to do. See if the arm talent is there. See if he can mentally process at that level, because if not, and you don't get him those snaps and he can't remain healthy, well, then they're probably going to have to look elsewhere for another quarterback too in the future. But taking this route where you're investing in somebody with high quality arm talent, like you said, a day one arm talent guy all day long, they're not a team that shies away from medicals, because if the talent is there, they'll take a risk.
It's worth a risk, man. Yeah,
especially as an undrafted free.
Undrafted, you're not taking a second or third round flyer on him, but for where he was, definitely worth the risk.
Versus what you use a pick for Clayton Thorson, a 5th round pick versus 300,000 guaranteed in undrafted free agent money.
I'm excited to really see what Carson Strong does this preseason in camp, and then Gino on defense. Linebacker Davion Taylor for me is someone I'm going to be more invested in than most, and I just really like the way things slowed down for him in year 2 last year, and I'm really upset that he got injured, because him and TJ Edwards really turned things around when, before that, who was it? Eric Wilson and Helk Singleton. It was a disastrous 1-2 punch at linebacker, and Taylor and Edwards were such an upgrade. Not that, and I just love his physical upside. It's why I understand the reach of Taylor in 2020 in the 3rd round. I'm not saying I want him to start over Kyzir White or Nakobe Dean, but and it's probably unpopular because of how good TJ Edwards was last year, but I prefer Taylor to be a bigger part of this linebacker rotation, especially in passing situations, as a coverage linebacker, as a blitzer. I don't know. White and Dean might be that new core, which is fine by me. Taylor hasn't been able to show he can stay healthy or consistent enough, but it would be good to keep seeing Taylor progress, because who knows? What if Kyzir White plays really well, but he prices himself out of Philly? He's only on a 1-year deal right now, and we know how stingy they are with linebacker contracts and draft picks. So you never know. It would just be nice to know you have another young linebacker still developing, behind those 2 starters.
Especially for the premium of a pick that you paid using a 3rd round.
Yeah, he's a 3rd round pick.
Yeah. You would like him to continue to improve. And I think we've seen marginal improvements over the past few seasons, especially in coverage. I think he got a lot better. I would say the one area he definitely needs to improve is recognizing and sticking in gaps during the run. So he's more likely going to be an off-ball type of guy during most of the season. But if he wants to see more snaps where TJ Edwards could take those away from him, it's going to be in situations where you might have to play on 1st and 2nd down and 10, where it's going to be a true rundown, and they're going to come your way. A good offensive coordinator is going to game plan against Davion Taylor in the run game. If they put out a personnel that gets that look where you might see 2 linebackers, Kyzir White and Davion Taylor, on the field thinking it's a passing situation, call the audible to a rundown, you have a bigger formation on offense. If a tight end or somebody on the offensive line gets to the 2nd level, they're going to kick him out of there. But if he comes down with the ferocity and the instinctiveness, that's where he has to get better. The instinctiveness coming downhill, you have a true caliber player in there, somebody who was super raw coming out of Colorado, where in high school, due to religious reasons, he couldn't play in most of the games. He only practiced, was very raw at Colorado, but ran track, an unbelievable athlete. And you have seen him have, I would say, open ice hockey-like hits in the open field in the NFL. Man. He can absolutely lay dudes out.
Yeah. Gino, who's a defensive player for you that you're going to maybe be more invested in than most this offseason?
I've gone back and forth on this one. I think we've talked a lot about the defensive line over the last couple weeks. We've hit on the secondary a lot in terms of who's going to be taking reps in coverage for linebacker, who's going to be an outside corner, who's going to be the safeties. One player that I think I'll be more focused on when the season starts is Avonte Maddox. But one player I'm focused on right now, especially with the acquisition of Jaquiski Tart, is Marcus Epps. I want to see how Marcus Epps responds to that. They're saying, okay, Marcus, we might not 100% believe in you, but you have competition in two guys that also have 1-year contracts. You're the youngest guy here. We have kept you around over multiple regimes, and we believe in your skill set. But we want to see what you do with competition around. Because last year it was really Rodney and Anthony Harris's job.
Right
out of the gate, right? Now it's a toss-up. I do not know who the two starting, and they might start 3 at times. They might have 3 of those guys on the field playing in those bigger packages where they want to defend against tight ends. But if you're going to go base 2 safeties too high, I don't know who's going to get.
It'll be an interesting bet. It would be an interesting bet to predict those two, because you're right. It could be Tart and Harris, the 2 veterans, the more experienced players. It could be Epps and Harris because of how efficient Epps was last year, even versus the other 2. It could be Tart and Epps. Who knows? I mean, it's not like Anthony Harris was so incredible last year that he deserves to be the unquestioned top safety of that defense. So, yeah, it's going to be really interesting. Safety especially, even though they brought in Jaquiski Tart, it's still the weakest link of this football team when it comes to their overall starters. But we'll take a further look at it in training camp and see how it all really does, formulate. And I think Kavon Wallace, Gino, is in there too. This kid has barely played football.
Didn't even think about that.
Right. I mean, but this was a player me and you both loved coming out of Clemson. So versatile. He was one of the most efficient slot defenders in all of college football coming out of the draft in 2020. And if he can stay healthy, who knows? He was the higher pick than Epps. I mean, this team has invested more in Kavon Wallace than the other 3. So you never know. I mean, maybe Wallace, it's not like the other guys, again, like I said, are cemented into a role on this defense. It's all open for those 4. It's competition, and that's going to be exciting to watch in camp for sure. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching. If you liked this video, make sure you subscribe to Locked On Eagles on our YouTube page. Monday through Friday, we have daily podcasts for you in full and short clips just like this. As always, thank you for downloading, watching, and listening, and let's go Birds.